The federal government has approved a pay increase of between 25% and 35% for civil servants on the remaining 6 consolidated salary structures. A statement signed by Head of Press, National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission, Emmanuel Njoku, said the increases took effect from January 1, 2024. The affected salary structures include the Consolidated Public Service Salary Structure, Consolidated Research and Allied Institution Salary Structure, Consolidated Police Salary Structure, Consolidated Paramilitary Salary Structure, Consolidated Intelligence Community Salary Structure, and Consolidated Armed Forces Salary Structure. Those in the tertiary education and health sectors had already received their increases, which involved Consolidated University Academic Salary Structure and Consolidated Tertiary Institution Salary Structure for universities. For polytechnics and colleges of education, it involved the Consolidated Polytechnics and Colleges of Education Academic Staff Salary Structure and Consolidated Tertiary Educational Institution Salary Structure. The health sector also benefited through the Consolidated Medical Salary Structure and Consolidated Health Sector Salary Structure. The federal government also approved increases in pension of between 20% and 28% for pensioners on the defined benefit scheme in respect to the 6 consolidated salary structures with effect from January 1, 2024. Meanwhile, the federal government has unveiled the ASSO Accord on Economic and Financial Inclusion, a multi-pronged blueprint designed to achieve universal access to financial services across Nigeria. The accord, signed last Thursday in Abuja, was made public yesterday via a communique issued by technical advisor to the President on Financial Inclusion, Dr. Nuruddin Abubakar Zaro. It represents a core pillar of President Bola Tinubu's administration's renewed hope agenda to transform the country into a $1 trillion economy by 2030 while combating poverty and insecurity through broad-based prosperity. The accord was signed by Vice President Kashim Shettima, Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, Governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Yemi Cardozo, and National Security Advisor Malam Nuhu Ribadu. Chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum, Governor Abdulrahman Abdulrazak of Kwara State, signed on behalf of the 36 states, while Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Bank PLC, Mr. Abubakar Suleiman, signed on behalf of the private sector. Leveraging comprehensive policy reforms and strategic investments, the ASSO Accord charts a roadmap to bridge the significant gaps that have left millions of Nigerians, particularly underserved segments like women, youth, rural communities and small businesses without vital financial services like credit, insurance, pensions and savings facilities. According to the communique issued at the end of a 2-day National Stakeholders Workshop on Economic and Financial Inclusion by Zoro, he quotes, and I quote, "Financial inclusion is an imperative, not just an economic objective, but a moral calling to unlock opportunities for every Nigerian to achieve their potential," end of quote. All right, so good day, you would say, for Nigerian workers with the announcement of the increase. Let's just verify that it is authenticated and it will be done. Very important. Verify your take on this story.
There you go. Speaking about verification, as regards that increase, yeah, I feel anything now we get is a welcome development. But also, I think Chris Oyeka, representing the labor, one of the labor union, had come out to say, I think the NLC had come out to say that NIWS, that wage scheme commission has no powers to do that. That it's just a waste of time. That's not entirely what they're talking about. So there's been one rejection to this announcement. Hitherto, we all know that a couple of other salary structures were bopped up. Now the army, the police, and the research allied, and a couple of other people were now bopped up with that percentile. But the question, Ayo, is this still far-reaching enough? No. And I run you through some statistics, I run you some numbers. In March 2019, when the minimum wage was increased to 30,000, inflation was 11.25%. It still remains 30,000. Inflation is 33.20%. In 2019, minimum wage was $88. 2020, it was $79. 2021, $63. 2022, $67. 2023, $65. 2023, $65. As at now, as we speak, 2024 is $23. So from a minimum wage of less than $100, we have moved to about $23 as we speak. But anyway, let's say barring the fact that negotiations are still going on, and probably they'll be able to hit the threshold. Kudos to Governor Obaseki. A lot of people are saying, maybe because of election coming up, but I would say kudos again to Governor Obaseki. At least he's bopped the one of Edo State up to 70,000. That's going to close to, I think, more than the $80 mile. Let's now look at bags of rice, which is a major staple commodity. 2020 was 26,000. 2021, 25,000. 2022, 31,000. 2023, 55,000. Now it's about 85,000. And that's a barometer to look at the way people earn. That's why even ILO is even talking about workplace. We're not even talking about the welfare encumbrances. There's another stat that came out recently to say that a Nigerian worker now spends 101% of his income on basic food items. So you can see how debilitating it is to be a worker in Nigeria. But we should also remember that it's a balancing act. Because if, like Labour is saying, I don't entirely support Labour's analogy of, bump it up to close to 500,000. No. Because the truth has to be said. We should never forget what happened in the 70s. This was how the cry came up, that we set up the Chief Jerome Udoji Commission, and the arrears and everything was bumped up. But we saw the attendant effect of inflation, and it was those inflation that marred our prospect up to the early 80s. So we also need to be careful. We had an economist here that was saying the threshold should be about 100,000 to 150,000. I think that's a negligible threshold. At least we're able to manage inflation and do a scenario-based planning. But apart from that, apart from increasing the minimum wage, what we should also do is to try as much as possible to be able to reduce, welfare encumbrances, healthcare encumbrances, food prices, and things like that. That's where the government should come and cushion the pain, because most of the monies, they still use to buy most of this thing, cost of transportation. That's why we want to see the CNG bus. I don't think they should wait till May 29 before they launch out those CNG buses. We want to see transportation costs go down marginally and have alternative sources of fuel and all of that. Because if you don't have that, then most of the monies, no matter how heavily you pay the workers, they see expend on all of this. As regards to 1 trillion economy, you see, I want Nigeria to grow, but I also want us to be realistic. When we did the rebasing in 2013, the rebasing showed us that we're about 510 billion economy. Today, as at there in 2013, we felt that if we could grow consistently, we could start to top 1 trillion in the next 10 years. But today we've retrogressed to about 253 billion economy. So we're about the 4th on the African continent. So how are we going to get to that 1 trillion if we don't grow? And you see, consistently over the years, we're averaging about 6% growth. Even we have an outlier growth under Olusegun Obasanjo of 13%. That was in 2002-03. But we're not growing heavily again. So if this government is saying we want to get to 1 trillion, can we really reach the mark? At least we should even get to have a trillion first. Secondly, what are the things we're supposed to do? We need to show up investment potential. And you see, that's my reason why I keep crying about this landmark case. See, I'm not saying nobody's above government, everybody's above government. It's not about landmark. Landmark is just the poster child for destruction. It's about the outlook of Nigeria with international investors. That's why we're crying. It's about the outlook of a Nigeria with, people that look at our economy and say, can we invest in the tourism sector? Landmark was a watershed in the tourism sector because we're getting low foot traffic in tourism, despite the potential we had. And these are what other countries are seeing. So if you want to grow to a 1 trillion economy, your mining, your solid mineral have to be up and working. Your crude oil sector has to be up and working. Your service sector has to be working. All your sectors have to be up and running. So those are the things we need to tell us. It's not just about signing an accord, a pact, or writing a roadmap. What's the willingness to getting it done? I rest my case.
Okay, first, today is May Day. The history of May Day is dated back to 1886, when you had, in Chicago, workers protesting about conditions of service, about their welfare, and leading to what is called the Haymarket Massacre. And then, greater focus turned to the welfare of workers. And by 1889, the Second International declared the celebration of May Day in memory of the people that were massacred, in 1886, and also to continually remind the world of the importance of the dignity of workers. And that is how it's been. Every May 1, every year, May Day, Workers' Day, is celebrated. In Nigeria, we're celebrating this year's May Day at a time of serious difficulties for the average Nigerian worker. As we speak, there is fuel scarcity in parts of the country. The cost of transportation is high. Inflation at 33.20% means that the cost of living has become very high. Food inflation is particularly a major problem in many parts of the country. And so this year, is also another year of lamentation. And we're going to hear part of that lamentation at the Workers' Day rally across the country, when it happens today. However, the president, or the federal government, has chosen today to announce increase in salaries of the remaining 6 consolidated, workers, salary structures, 35%, and also 28% for pensioners within that category. Now, the question I ask is, what exactly is this? Is it just the federal government playing Father Christmas, or the federal government just saying, well, regular adjustment? After all, they've done the same thing for workers, public servants, civil servants in the tertiary sector and also the health sector. I ask, what exactly and what the details are, because we do not know the details yet. Pensioners will also get 28%, fine. But this is just for a certain category of workers. And that's why Labour is saying that if there is going to be any salary adjustment, it must be across board for all civil servants within the federal public service. And I think their point is clear, but that point has to be linked to the fact that in January, this same federal government, the Tinubu administration, set up a 37 tripartite committee, including Labour, the private sector, and government officials, to take another look at the national minimum wage structure and to report to government before the end of April. April has ended. Today is May 1. The outcome of that process, we were told, will be announced on May 1. As that tripartite committee completed its work, after all, it had zonal consultations to get the input of workers across the 6 geopolitical zones. We would like to see, because that's a concrete thing, because the national minimum wage is a creation of law, and the previous law has outlived its relevance. Now we'll see what the president says today about that new national minimum wage, beyond this 25% increase, 35% increase for certain categories of civil servants. And then as for pensioners, now do we have a policy in place, as they do in the United Kingdom, whereby there is a regular review of pensioners' entitlements in line with inflation or increases in minimum wage or 25%, whichever comes first. Anyway, that's that about that. Secondly, the theme thirdly, the theme for this year's May Day is ensuring workers' occupational safety and health within the context of climate change. Climate change, according to the International Labour Organization, is a big issue. And as the climate continues to change, workers will be dealing with a number of hazards resulting from rise in temperature, resulting from ultraviolet radiation, resulting in diseases not previously anticipated, and difficulties within the workplace. And that's why occupational safety and health is very important. The question is, in Nigeria here, do we pay enough attention to occupational safety and health? The answer is no, in capital letters, because we don't have a structure in place to make sure that workers are not necessarily endangered. You see many of these companies managed by some persons who conduct themselves as if they are above the law. No attention is paid to occupational safety, and we don't have a structure in place to ensure this. However, in terms of the responses from government, we have seen, very flowery statements. Senator Akpabio says, Nigerian workers are diligent, they are patriotic, and the Senate is committed to their welfare. We had the same thing last year. We had the same thing the year before. The plight of the Nigerian worker has not improved. Mrs. Tinubu, the First Lady, praises the Nigerian worker for his resilience, for his patriotism also, and what she calls the spirit of work, which seems to be thriving in Nigeria. Yes, these are the usual things. Before the end of today, all the governors will come with their own flowery statements. What the Nigerian worker wants to see is improvement in his living conditions and attention paid to his welfare, paid to his dignity, and paid to the theme of this year's May Day, which is occupational health and safety in the face of climate change developments. To the second topic, which is basically about financial inclusion and services, and expanding the network for getting the underserved members of the community into the net, to promote entrepreneurship, and also to see that these persons who are at the bottom are also positioned to contribute to economic growth within the context of the federal government pursuing the objective. It's an objective. They don't even have a clear roadmap for it. An objective of achieving a 1 trillion naira economy. However, if you look at the details from the workshop that was held, it's just the same statements again. They call it ASUO Accord. What a fanciful title. And that the 36 state governors have signed, other people have signed and all of that. Well, the state governors who have been committed to the project, those state governors, what is their relationship with the local governments? Because many of these people are in the rural areas. Now they say they are going to promote entrepreneurship among the ordinary people. The same ordinary people who have issues with productivity. You can't have a 1 trillion naira economy or work towards it as an objective if there is no productivity within the system. A lot of people want to be productive. The average Nigerian worker wants to work. Okay, how are you going to capture the farmer in the Middle Belt region who cannot go to farm for security reasons? How do you capture the neglected people, workers in the rural areas who also cannot farm because they don't have the support, because they don't have access to credit? So these are some of the issues. It's not just the rhetoric about 1 trillion naira economy and mobilizing bottom up for economic growth, fine phrases that they teach in business schools. We want to see concrete effort and results.
Concrete efforts and results. Okay, today is May Day, Workers' Day, so I'm going to concentrate on Workers' Day and some of the messages that have come through. The First Lady of Nigeria, Senator Remi Tinubu, had saluted the resilience and doggedness of the Nigerian worker. And I think for a lot of people, that would be what would be celebrating the most, because when you want to count the most resilient of people, people who are dogged, people who are long suffering, come to Nigeria and salute the Nigerian worker. But I'd like to make a case, even as we talked about the announcement of an increase, percentage increase for some classes of workers in the civil service. By the way, Labour is asking that this should be across boards and not just for a few, some categories of workers in the civil service. But in terms of the conditions of workers, it's not just about pay. Pay is a critical part of that, and I'm not sure the NLC would think that this is enough money in terms of the realities of inflation that the Nigerian worker currently faces. But a few things that we might want to consider when we look at International Workers' Day and how we can improve the lot of the Nigerian worker. So beyond wage increase, what are the other things? One of the things is, of course, we talk about access to food. At the end of the day, the reason a man or a woman would work is so that they're able to maintain at least a quality standard of living. And if the government wants to make work worth it for the Nigerian, then let there be opportunities to be able to purchase to the amount of money that is being earned. At the end of the day, when it's the end of the month, you look at your salary or bank statement, and it's almost enough to cry, because when you look at that in vis-a-vis what that can purchase in the market, or to look at your family, it's next to nothing, and it almost makes going to work in a whole month, not worth it. Access to quality education. At the end of the day, if we want to, when we talk about schools for our children, for the Nigerian worker, if they must work and be happy that they're going to work on a daily basis, let's ensure that the next generation, the people for whom a lot of them go out to sweat, are also being looked after in terms of what our educational facilities currently look like. Access to quality healthcare, get more Nigerian workers on HMO, ensure that when they fall ill or emergency situations come up like that, they don't go completely bankrupt or have to do a fundraiser in order to get some money. Dignity at the end of work. We looked at pensions and that there's a 28% pensions increase in terms of pensions for that category of workers. What is the hope of the Nigerian worker after retirement? 60 years old, what happens? For a lot of people, it's bleak. They don't know what they're going to do because unlike other climates where there's dignity in labor so that at the end of work, you are able to have a proper retirement because there's a proper plan for you in terms of pensions. You're able to live an appreciable level of or standard of living at the end of work. For the Nigerian worker, in many cases, that's not the case. That's something to also look to. Timely payments of salaries. It's unfortunate that in 2024, there are still some states in Nigeria that do not pay workers' salary on time or are owing a backlog of workers' salaries and pensions. It should not be heard of. So whilst we're celebrating Workers' Day today, a number of people do not have the opportunity or privilege of doing that because they don't even have money to do so, or they don't even know the next time when they're going to be paid. A number of things we could talk about. Good standard of living. A lot of workers are on queues today. Or Workers' Day that is meant to be a day to recognize the hard work, diligence of the Nigerian workers. So it's not just about rhetorics and sending out goodwill messages. It's about putting work and letting the Nigerian workers know that there's dignity in labor. And so when the government is in such a way that it enables a thriving economy for Nigerians to truly enjoy the benefit of their hard work. So happy Workers' Day, resilient Nigerian worker. All we hope and what we are pushing for daily is that things will be better so that life can be better for the Nigerian man and woman.